Welcome to r/revenge stories, where you will hear satisfying revenge stories from 4 different subreddits. If you are new around here, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel because I upload daily content, and without wasting any more time, let's dive right in. And guys, on a quick side note, for this video we will be starting off with petty revenge, then go over to regular, pro, nuclear, and then finally end the video with a TreeLaw story, so be sure to stick until the end. The first one is titled Sniffin' Things. Years ago, when I got married, my dad gave me my grandmother's wedding ring to give to my wife. At the reception, the ladies were admiring my wife's ring when my aunt, who's known to be a class AC, my dad's sister, saw my wife's wedding ring and became visibly upset. She grabbed her things quietly and left the reception. Of course, we all noticed. When I asked my dad about it later on, he told me the following story. Your aunt was a spoiled brat. She treated my parents terribly. She ostracized herself from the family because she wanted nothing to do with us. She felt that my parents owed her everything and anything that they could give to her in regards to money and support. My parents were great people. Her problem was that years ago my mother refused to buy her a new car even though my sister could afford it. My parents offered to buy her a used refurbished car, but my sister's argument was that there's nothing like the real thing. There was a big family argument where she cursed them out and she abandoned the family for around 10 years. Years later, as my mother started to become ill, my sister would not visit her once. Towards the end, where we knew she had little chance of living or going on, my sister suddenly showed up. One night, while going to the bathroom, I heard a noise in my mom's bedroom and there was my sister trying on my mom's rings. One of them was my mom's wedding band that she had always wanted. When I asked my mom later about it, she said that my sister had always wanted that ring, but my mother did not want her to have it because she knew that deep down she was still a spoiled, nasty person and she felt that a ring that was given to her out of love should go to someone else out of love, and the only person she could think of was her grandson. She wanted that ring to go to her grandson's new wife when he got married down the road. My dad then proceeded to tell me that he borrowed the wedding ring and took it to a jeweler friend of his. They were buddies since high school. He asked his friend if he could make an exact duplicate of that ring, but with cubic zirconia and fake stones that go with it. When my mother passed away, my dad went to her room and exchanged the ring for the real one. He said, "I knew the girl would come sniffin'." Sure enough, the same day that my grandmother died, my aunt made some excuse to come over to her house, saying that she left something there. My dad swung by later, and when he looked in the jewelry box, the ring was missing. Fine. On the day of the wedding, after my aunt saw my wife's new ring as she was walking back to her table, my dad whispered to her, "I hope you enjoyed your fake ring. There's nothing like the real thing, huh?" Okay, I gotta say, that has to be one of my favorite petty revenge stories ever. I'm curious, did you guys ever get any jewelry from your parents or grandparents that you still hold on to dearly? Let us know in the comments. And the next one is from r/regular revenge, but honestly, if you ask me, it could also be in pro revenge. It is titled, Got an a-hole fired and helped a coworker get a job they wanted. Well, I was told this is not pro revenge and I don't feel it meets petty or nuclear, so here it goes. About 20 years ago, I got a job at a warehouse/delivery place pulling and delivering windshields. When I started, there were 6 drivers, 1 old white guy who had been there since humanity existed, 4 young black guys, and me, a white female. I mention this only because, unfortunately, it does become important later. There were also 4 to 5 people in the office running sales/admin, including the only other female at the company. She had wanted a delivery job but had been told that is not a woman's job, so was stuck in the office. The guy who hired me made a big deal about how he had stuck his neck out for me and was getting crap from his buddies for hiring a woman. There was some undertone about equal opportunity, but I've never counted on that and made sure I went above and beyond. At the time, it was a locally owned place and rules were not really standardized about most things. In theory, each driver was supposed to take orders for the next route scheduled, load up the next available truck and head out. In reality, there was an unofficial packing order and each driver had their route and truck. As the new guy, I got the less than great pickup truck with an open air rack and various problems. Most of the other trucks were box trucks. Think small moving trucks so the windshields would not get wet as they were delivered and the driver could rearrange things inside the truck if the route got switched around for whatever reason. I also got the furthest away route with the latest delivery times, so I usually got stuck in rush hour on the way back. I know the rules though, so I shut my mouth, sucked it up and waited for turnover to make me not the new guy and get a better truck/route. Surprisingly, turnover did not happen. There were the usual problems with 2 of the workers not pulling their weight, but no one ever got fired. The worst offender was, of course, the guy at the top of the unofficial packing order. We will call him Mike. The dude was huge, easily a foot taller than me. I'm not short, I'm pretty sure all he did was work and work out, and he constantly bragged about doing steroids to get bigger. He would only take the shortest run with the fewest deliveries and spend the rest of the time talking crap with the other drivers or just randomly vanishing. A couple months after I started, I got some big orders for my routes all in a row and asked for help so I could gather everything, load up and head out on time. This was not uncommon, there were several machines used for pulling the stock, so if you finished your orders early, you helped others who were behind. Not Mike though, you would think I had asked him to skin a puppy. He got in my face, yelling about how dare I ask him to do anything, I am just a new guy, get out of here and don't let him see me again, etc. You get the picture. One of the other guys I had become friends with pulled me away and helped me get loaded up and out the door, but that never really sat right with me. Mike had never been friendly to me, but after that day he would go out of his way to be an ass, nothing big, but enough to seriously irritate me and intimidate the other guys to not talk to me when he was around. A little while later, I mentioned the outburst to the lady in the office and she told me why nothing would ever be done about Mike or anyone else. Apparently, the personal guy, we will call him Tony, had gotten fired from his previous job over a complaint about racism. He had used the phrase Black Friday to refer to, well, Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving when sales are supposed to get companies back in the black/financial solvent. Apparently, one of his employees claimed he used it as a racist remark, it got taken to court and somehow Tony was found guilty and fired. Basically, that meant that he could not take any actions against a black worker ever again because he's got a prior judgment against him. The drivers knew that and Mike and one other, but he's not important here, absolutely used it to do the bare minimum required to stay employed. That did not sit right with me either, but I was just a driver and the new guy, so nothing I could do about it. Until a couple months later. The owner did some necessary maintenance around the place and one of the things done was getting rid of my old truck and buying a newer one that was half enclosed/half open air racks. The owner apparently said it should go to whoever had driven the old truck as an apology for not having heat/AC in the old one, but I'm not super picky. I offered it to the old guy because seniority, but he turned it down in favor of his truck that he was used to and was fully enclosed. I offered it to the 2 black guys who actually did their jobs and were pretty decent to me when Mike was not around, but same thing, they wanted their own enclosed trucks. Okay, cool, newish truck for me. I spent the first day getting used to it and stayed late off the clock getting it sparkling clean inside and out. The only thing it lacked was the new car smell, everything else was polished, cleaned, buffed, shined, etc. Well, apparently, the fact that I did not bow and scrape to Mike pissed him off even more, and seeing the new truck out back all shiny and pristine was too much to handle. He was already out on a run when I came in the next day, so I loaded up and headed out as per usual. I got back about 5 minutes before his second run of the day was supposed to leave, and he came storming out before I could even get out of the truck, screaming profanity.
"How dare you take my truck? Get the F out of that thing. Get your crap out. That's my truck. I'm gonna take it cause it looks good and I deserve it. You're just a little female dog. You don't deserve anything nice. I'm gonna F you up."
On a side note, I don't tolerate bullies at all and I don't back down easily. I was always the little kid growing up and I learned just how far I could push it, mouthing off and calmly standing up to kids bigger than me because, oh, you're so tough? You're gonna pick on a little girl? As I grew up, I tended to work in man's jobs, so I was used to taking some crap but also drawing a line firmly in the sand and defending it. I am occasionally surprised I have not gotten decked a time or two, but I've gotten pretty good at reading a situation. Back to the story, I am sitting in the newish truck with Mike standing outside the door, screaming profanity and threats at me. For all the crap that Mike talked though, I got the feeling he was used to getting his way without actual violence. I calmly opened the door and got out, but left my personal belongings in the truck and locked the door behind me. He was doing his damnedest, and by the way, is that even a word, to intimidate me, getting up in my space, finger in my face, personal threats, etc. I started walking towards the office, which was all the way on the opposite end of the warehouse, and he followed me the whole way, still screaming, threats getting worse and worse, apparently ignorant to the fact that literally every single employee had stopped what they were doing and were watching us. I walked into the office and just stood there for about 4 to 5 minutes, staring at the owner while Mike just kept going off. He finally realized I was not reacting to him and ran out of steam, and you could see the realization of where he was register on his face, but he glanced over at Tony and smirked, probably figuring he was still untouchable. In the silence that followed, I calmly said to the owner, "You have 4 black guys working in the warehouse." He nodded. "And you have 1 woman working out there." He nodded again, and I saw the light come on. Without looking at anyone else, I said, "I do not want to pull the gender card here, but if something is not done about this situation, I will have to take steps to ensure my safety." I grabbed the tickets for my next run, turned around and walked back to the warehouse to start pulling the orders. I'm not really sure what happened next, because all the other guys had mysteriously gotten loaded and left on their runs in record time, and I followed not long after. When I got back, Mike was no longer there, and one of the other guys was training the admin lady to be a new driver. Over the next week, I got a quiet "thank you" from her, Tony, and the other drivers who actually did work. The other slacker guy got fired a while later for possession with intent to distribute, I believe. I left about a year later to drive bigger trucks, but by then we had a pretty solid crew of drivers who helped each other out. But guys, to be honest, I'm not sure if I completely understood this story. So basically Mike got fired for being a douchebag and for discrimination? Please correct me in case I got that wrong. Either way, if you have watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments and also like the video to support me. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is gonna be from r/ProRevenge and is titled, "I froze my psycho neighbor out of her apartment." In college, my 2 friends and I decided to find a place together off campus. We found a beautiful 3-bedroom house with surprisingly affordable rent. The basement of the house was listed as a separate apartment, but as it had a separate entrance and the indoor stairwell had been blocked off, we were not worried. And the thermostat was upstairs. Then the demon neighbor moved in. From upstairs we could hear everything. This adult woman would call her mother and scream at her to pay for her cell phone bills and give her grocery money, aka Taco Bell and cheap tequila. She would scream at whatever guy she was sleeping with to bring her meth, and one day she brought home 3 puppies to scream at too. We were terrified of this woman and the noise was hell. Also, we had been idiotic enough to sign a lease stating we were responsible for all utilities, period. Meaning we were now financing her gas, water and electric. But with only 2 months left on the lease, we thought we could just ride it out. But then she started smoking, constantly. According to the landlord, she had
quit for good
when she had signed the lease, but
for good
only lasted 2 days. Since it was winter, the heat was running nearly 24/7 and the smoke was wafting up from the vents. Our apartment and all our belongings began to reek with smoke. We contacted the landlord because we had signed for a bloody non-smoking apartment. He told us we lived in a state where you could technically call an apartment non-smoking even if it shared ventilation with a smoking apartment. FU leasing laws. At this point, my 2 roommates were heading out for a 2-week vacation. They were online students while I was residential, leaving me alone in the apartment with the demon smoker in the basement. I could not sleep or eat because my idiotic stomach decided to react to all the secondhand smoke by aching and cramping constantly. After 3 days, I was a little insane. I made a plan. I checked the forecast, lows in the 20s all week. I borrowed a friend's ultra insulated sleeping bag. I bought one of those ski masks with the holes for your eyes and mouth. I got out my stocking cap, my silk long underwear, my woolen socks and my down parka. I bought tea, hot cocoa and ramen and prepared to live off a diet of hot liquids. And I turned off the effing heat. Day 1, she's screaming at her mother for forcing her to move into this frozen crap hole of an apartment. Day number 2, she is screaming at her boyfriend, meth dealer, because he won't let her move in with him. Day number 3, she's screaming at the landlord about how she is effing freezing. Day number 4, the landlord is at my door. I greet him in full ski mask, parka, stocking cap array, looking like I'm heading out to rob Santa Claus at the North Pole. He asks me if I don't find it a little chilly in the house. I reply I had found all the cigarette smoke a little warm. Day number 5, she's screaming about
the witch is upstairs
to anyone who will listen, and I'm sitting upstairs clutching my car keys and my pepper spray with 9/11 typed into my phone. She finally decides she's effing leaving and moving in with Greg.
Even though he just got out for stabbing Travis and he lives in that effing creepy house in the woods with all those a-hole biting dogs.
Day number 6, she's gone. I silently bless Greg. Moral of the story, there's a bloody reason the rent seems too good to be true. PS, for those wondering, I did have a friend who worked plumbing stop by to give me some advice about how long I could go before I burst the water pipes to hell and back. By the way guys, I'm curious, are you allowed to smoke in your apartment? Or rather, how many of my viewers actually smoke? Personally, I have many people in my family, or I had many people in my family that smoked cigarettes. However, personally, I don't drink alcohol or smoke. Waste of money if you ask me. The next one is from r/nuclear revenge and it is actually a true story. It is titled Marvin's Killdozer. Sometime in the early 2000s, there was a small town in Colorado. Among the residents in Granby, there was a muffler repair shop owner named Marvin Heemeyer. Or Heemeyer, I'm not sure. He was a sort of cool guy, I don't know how to describe him. He also got along with some people. One day, some company was gonna make a concrete plant right next to his shop. Marvin was against the idea, but he was alone. The construction of the plant would cut off the only entrance to the shop. Marvin tried to get people to sign a petition, but he could not get enough people to sign. Marvin decided he was going to make his own entrance to the shop and bought everything he needed to do so. The city denied his request to build a new road. Eventually, the concrete plant cut off Marvin's sewage and the city fined Marvin for it. This was the last straw. Marvin started constructing a tank out of the materials he got to build a new road to his shop. One of the items was a bulldozer. He recorded himself often and eventually finished the Killdozer. Despite its name, it never killed anyone. He designed it that when the armor was lifted onto the bulldozer, it is not coming off. Marvin got into the bulldozer and lifted the armor onto it. Marvin drove the Killdozer through his shop and into the concrete plant. He goes to the city and destroys buildings of those who wronged him. such as a newspaper place that lied about Marvin, the former mayor's house, and the town hall. He destroyed many more buildings. The governor of Colorado even considered destroying the Killdozer with Hellfire missiles. That idea was scrapped for obvious reasons. When Marvin was destroying a shop, the radiator was leaking and the bulldozer broke down. Marvin then shot himself. A guy in the comments said, "I've heard of this guy before and being honest, I feel sorry for him. Just over and over again, he got effed by corruption and ruined the livelihood. May he rest in peace." Another person said, "He correctly identified those who harmed him and returned the favor. He did not murder anyone. The politicians and business owners thought they could F him over and it would not matter because he did not matter. Oh, it's not personal, it's just business or politics. He took it personally and he hit back. So he mattered. I bet the politicians in that county and the surrounding counties effed with people a whole lot less in subsequent years because they mattered now, because any of them could hit back." Let me know in the comments, guys, if you have ever heard of this story in real life. Interestingly enough, there were a lot of conflicting opinions in the comments. Some people said this guy was just crazy and what he did was not justified. Let me know your opinion about this in the comments. And guys, if you have watched until here, thank you so much for sticking by, and as a reward you will get a TreeLaw story. This one is actually from Pro Revenge and is titled "Destroy Our Tree? We Will Destroy Your Driveway." Full disclosure, this happened almost 5 years ago, so my memory of this is a little fuzzy at times. However, the major player here confirmed that it is accurate enough to get the story across, so I'm going with it. It is also kinda lengthy, so there's a too long didn't read at the end. Background: our house is old, it is really old, it is older than the town, hell, it's older than Confederation. The house was originally built by a merchant from the area like 200 years ago. It is old, with its age comes a very big property line, and apart from a couple adjustments here and there to account for infrastructure and housing development, it is basically unchanged from 100 years ago. It rarely ever comes up here, but in any dispute relating to property lines, the official town plan takes precedent, and our property line crosses over into our neighbor's property, which will be important later. And now for the two major players in this tale, our a-hole neighbor, who we will call Lumpy. He's just the worst. He ran an illegal chop shop in his backyard and seemed to be deathly afraid of trees. He also always took a 2-week-long vacation in summer, and it was always at the end of July. This part is also important later. The other one is my dad. At the time he was in government oversight, but before that he was in the Department of Justice, and his major responsibilities included training crown attorneys. This included the attorneys general. In the pecking order, Dad was actually pretty low, but the crown knew and respected him, and they were keenly aware that Dad knew the law inside and out. If there was anything even remotely resembling a legal dispute, Dad was almost always in the right with his argument. Now we begin our tale. The slide, the line between our yard and Lumpy's, was pretty clear. Our side was grass, protest and lilies, shrubs and trees. His was a gravel driveway. Before the incident, there was a large Manitoba maple tree growing there. It was very old, but grew in such a way that it blocked just enough sunlight to have a pleasant level of light going through the window. We had no intentions of ever removing it, maybe trim it a little if it got too close to the windows. However, some lower branches were sagging onto Lumpy's driveway, so he asked if he could cut down some of the lower branches so that his car would not get damaged when he drove in and out. It was a fair enough request, and he did ask permission first, so we told him we will get a landscaper and a quote for him, since we sure as hell were not going to pay for it. A couple days later, we were all on a day trip somewhere, and when we got back, Lumpy comes over and tells us not to worry about the landscaper because he
took care of it.
Red flags were waving at that statement. So we went and checked the tree. The bastard cut the entire tree down. Then, to add insult to injury, he painted the stump with some sort of weird grey stuff. Don't know what it was, but it had to have been toxic as F, because nothing ever grew on that stump again, not even fungi. So we are understandably pissed off, but unfortunately there's nothing we can do about it because there's no proof. So now we've got a stump that was once a beautiful tree, a smug neighbor, and seemingly no course of action to take. Dad did not accept that scenario and he had a plan. The plan was, as I said earlier, Dad knew the law inside and out, so he began to plan things out. He made a few phone calls to the town's civil architect, a couple inspectors, the landscaper he was going to get that quote from, and a contractor. He visited City Hall and got a copy of the official town plan, which, remember, is the final word on property lines. He had everything arranged and now he began to wait. The revenge, like clockwork, Lumpy went on vacation and the plan was enacted. Over the course of 2 weeks, we expanded. We rebuilt our fence to new dimensions, rearranged the shrubs, dug up the gravel driveway and put fresh dirt and grass over it and planted a weeping willow in a spot where, as it grew, would always hang and shed into Lumpy's yard. With the expanded fence and shrubbery, Lumpy's driveway was a small strip of pavement, maybe half a meter wide. The fence placed an old dying maple and a hawthorn on our side, but because of how the 2 trees grew, most of it was on Lumpy's side. The key point is that the placement of the trunk dictates whose property it is on, so it is our tree that he cannot touch, no matter how annoying or destructive it is. With the new dimensions, the chop shop he was running was now on our side of the fence, but because it was illegal, it was just scrap metal as far as the law was concerned. So we sold it to a local scrapyard. By the time Lumpy came back, our yard had expanded almost 3 meters into his yard, and waiting for him was Dad, the civil architect, and a lawyer with a stack of documents outlining in full detail that what they did was 100% legal and there was not a thing he could do about it. And guys, that is what I would call nuclear lawful revenge. And with that, we have reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's content, and if you did, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to join our amazing community. Furthermore, don't forget to go to r/ripestories on Reddit to post your own stories if you want me to read them out in a video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I see you again tomorrow.